It's exciting to have so many people here. There are, and we are all here because of the community that has been formed on the unceded
I've joined before.
of the Chiano First Nation. And this is something that the college is working to renew and reinvigorate our connection with the Chiano First Nation, also known as the Salmon people. And as an independent nation within the Coast Salish community, it's a great honor to learn from them about living on this land and to learn from them about the ways education can really make a positive difference in our world. So I'm grateful to that. I see on the call many people, as I started to mention, I see there's parents, there's former faculty and former staff, there's members of our current community, friends of the college, neighbors of the college, contributors to the college. Of course, there's many alum on the call. Thank you and welcome. And if you'd like to take a moment just in the chat to say where you are calling in from, it's always great to see that. I'm happy to see it's plus 23 degrees in Australia. And and we have a comparison with New Zealand. I hope everybody is safe, and it's great to see Mexico City, Bermuda, people here at Pedder Bay as well. Today, one of the things that is going to become clear as we go through our program, which is going to include some initial thoughts on curriculum redesign at Pearson, and then connection with what's going on right now on campus and in the community. And we're going to conclude with some ideas that are coming from alum of projects people are working on. Before we get to that, you may see a theme running through part of the program today, and that is of International Women's Day coming up on Monday. In different parts of the world, this is celebrated differently, and we've invited some students to talk about how that's going to be celebrated at Pearson as well. So without further ado, I am going to introduce the three speakers, and thank you for all the people in the chat who've said hello. So we also have a -10 in Montreal. So I think we're getting the 33 degrees difference in the world. Hopefully we can connect across differences of temperature as well as geography. I'll introduce the people who are going to start talking about education and curriculum redesign. We're going to start with our head of college, Craig Davis, and we're excited that he's able to speak to us today in person. The other person we've invited is Dr. Deb Saucier from Vancouver Island University. And something that many of you will remember, or some of you know very well, Vancouver Island does not have the most reliable electricity grid. And so while she is the president and vice chancellor at Vancouver Island University, she's actually not able to join us in person today. But we do have a video of her speaking this morning, and we'll gather that as well. And then Maria, who is also going to speak in our final session of seeding the conversation. Then I'll create some breakout rooms. They'll be relatively small, and they never last long enough. And there'll be a chance for you to discuss what you've heard, and we'll take questions after that. So Craig, over to you.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome everyone. It's so good to see you all from all over the world. I'm here just today to give you some introductory comments and an overview of our plans around place-based education and curriculum review, and to explain the why for this, and to really seek some feedback from you and any input you have, either now or at some future date if we can do some more development work on this. So the work we're doing at the moment isn't new. This has been ongoing at Pearson for many years. However, I'm going to frame the introduction today around 4 points to make an argument about why we need to make the change now. So the first one is that when work began constructing and designing the curriculum at Pearson back in 1971, there were approximately 12 IB schools worldwide. It was a brand new curriculum framed by the then innovative thinking of Robert Leach, Alec Peterson, and Kurt Hahn. But today we are in a situation where there are nearly 6,000 IB schools in 160 countries. So whilst the IB diploma is clearly still considered a rigorous and challenging pre-university curriculum, arguably it is no longer innovative, future-leaning, or groundbreaking. So the second area to posit as a rationale for why we're having a rethink is that the work that has been recently led by educators such as Heather has identified that our own educational principles are not exactly being met with the provision that we have. And as a reminder, we make a promise to our students at Pearson that their experience will be transformative, experiential, holistic, intergenerational, inclusive, and place-based. We've been reflecting on the fact that we're not really meeting some of these goals, largely because the majority of our students' time is taken up following a traditional 6-subject, exam-centered route in the IB diploma. The third area is, in terms of making a compelling case for why we need to do something now, is around maximizing our location in partnership with both the Shianu First Nation and adjacent Coast Salish First Nation local ecosystem expertise. So building on the great work we have developed ourselves with our marine science course, our Race Rocks experience, our waterfront and outdoor leadership, our project weeks, our emerging work in forest ecosystem science, even astronomy at the observatory, and developing an Indigenous ontological lens. How can we further this to ensure that coverage is experienced by all students through those partnerships with local First Nations groups? And the fourth area, just to give you an idea of, is the current thinking amongst the 18 United World College heads as part of an ongoing reflection across the movement about our mission, vision, and values. So we know we have an imperative to create a global education movement that makes education a force for peace and a sustainable future. So that mission was forged in the context of the Cold War needs, and perhaps there needs to be a re-emphasis and a real focus on the notion of sustainability and the issue of climate crisis. This is now the movement's overriding moral imperative. So why not use the fantastic model we currently have of bringing students together from all 4 corners, but instead of focusing just on the notion of intercultural understanding, we need to be helping to solve the biggest problem facing humanity at the moment. So in addition to that, we have the huge pressures that we're feeling as a result of a zoonotic pandemic crisis, which has further galvanized our global efforts to solve this climate crisis, develop green economies, innovate STEM technologies that can help with carbon extraction, and the collective political solutions that are also needed in terms of rethinking education to help combat the biggest existential crisis facing the planet. So we've recently been able to consult and interact with leading experts in this field who happen to be on our doorstep here on Vancouver Island. Leading science educator, Professor Ellen Kelsey, who has written the successful book Hope Matters, is consulting with us from UVic. World-renowned complexity theorist, Professor Thomas Homer Dixon, whose own best-selling text, Commanding Hope, has made huge ripples out there in the global community. And as mentioned, our very own alumna, Deb Saucier, president of Vancouver Island University, who we'll hear from in a moment. The consensus is clear. We need a curriculum experience that helps curate expertise, knowledge, and skills that can find solutions to this immediate crisis. So not adapting our provision, programming, and education to meet these needs is arguably to neglect a duty of care for the next generation. So as Pearson approaches its 50th birthday, we need to draw on the moral courage to create a new curriculum pathway, one that is place-based and taps into our students' call to address both social justice and climate change that we can call climate justice, framed in terms of solutions, not just problem identification, and then also draws on Coast Salish Indigenous epistemology and practice. So that's it from me, and I'm happy to hand back to Heather now to introduce the next person to talk on this topic.
Thanks so much. We are going to try and see if we can get the message that we recorded from Deb Saucier this morning. So let's see if this works for us with the power that we still have on Vancouver Island.
I'm here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome. So speaking of partners who are doing great work in this area, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Well, first I just want to say that I'm coming to you from the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation in Nanaimo, BC today on Vancouver Island. And I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time and for Craig asking me to speak today. And in thinking about this, Craig and I had a conversation, oh gosh, it must have been a month ago or so, about what we were doing at VIU and my thoughts on this. And I'd start with saying that I actually think Universities are in somewhat the same position as the IB schools, in that, first and foremost, universities are the ultimate colonial structure, right? They flourished all over the world, and they have the same subjects that almost every school, biology, philosophy, sociology, and the like. They recognize expertise in the same way. The PhD is the be all and end all, right? And they assess knowledge the same way too, right? The exam, the essay, the group project, whatever, it doesn't vary a ton. And although universities have evolved a little bit over the last 26 years since I graduated with my last degree, much hasn't changed at all, right? There's been an increased focus on co-ops or work integrated learning and those kinds of pieces. But again, there's still this emphasis on the final exam, right? I said to Craig, one of the things that always strikes me is that in the learning outcomes and syllabi, it never says that you should be able to answer 25 multiple choice questions on December 6th at 11 o'clock, right? And yet that's how we assess whether you actually achieved those learning outcomes. So I think we can do more. And I think VIU is an interesting model to think about when you think about curriculum, because although we do a lot of things the same as every other university, we do some things that are really, really different. And the first is who we invite to come to university. We explicitly at VIU invite individuals who are disabled, particularly those with cognitive disabilities, to attend university, to upgrade their skills and to participate fully in the life of the university. Think about that for a minute, right? If the university is a place of the mind, and we're committed to inclusion in our societies, we need to do more for those who are de facto excluded from post-secondary education. We also differ in how and what we teach, though, in that, yes, we have biology, and yes, we have English and those sorts of things, but we also have the trades. And I guess the question I would pose to you is, who said hairdressing doesn't belong at university? Because my discipline, neuroscience, didn't exist when I started university, and they let us in. And I tell you, as a neuroscientist, we're a little bit sketchy. So, but who decided things like forestry as a discipline, other than studying how trees grow or computers or those sorts of things, doesn't belong either, right? So again, there are significant questions about what should or shouldn't belong as subjects at university. And finally, one of the things VIU does, and I think this is really strong and perhaps relevant to our conversation today, is who gets to teach, right? I get to teach because I have a PhD. But what about an elder who, because of residential school, never finished high school, but they're recognized by their peers as elders, right? Which is the same sort of recognition you get as a PhD. And VIU actually hires elders as faculty, and they teach in the classroom and they share Indigenous knowledge in appropriate ways. But to get back to the point of this, many schools do similar sorts of things to that. But what is really unique about VIU is where we are. It's the only thing that you can't replicate somewhere else, right? You can't be anywhere other than where we are. And so it's our connection to this place and this land that I actually think makes VIU really special. And with that connection to the land, in partnership with the nations, we've created programming like Indigenous ecotourism with the Heiltsuk First Nation, or with Nuu-chah-nulth Tribal Council, specific programmings related to fisheries and the like. But those are still very colonial formatted programs, right? You take 6 credits of this and 4 credits of that, and you do this in this sequence, and away you go. But what if we really flipped it on its head and actually co-created with the nation's programs, and programs that are respectful of how folks actually understand this place? We have tremendous richness here. We have people who are the kindest, most generous folks I've ever met, who are more than willing to share what they have learned from living on this land for more than 10,000 years. And they're willing to share it with almost anyone who's willing to be respectful and to learn that. And when we've offered programs like that, we find that they're profoundly transformative. that people walk away completely different, because it's our connection to the land and our commitment that we are only caretakers of this land. We are caretaking it for our grandchildren that becomes evident. And when we talk to our learners, that's what they tell us they want. They want to solve the big problems of today. And I can think of no bigger problem than social justice, climate change, income inequality, and the things that really plague us, that if we really want to fulfill what we went to IB schools for, right, to change the world, we're going to have to solve those pieces. I think this is what our students want. I think this is what we can do at Pearson and at VIU. And I'm more than happy to try the ride to get there, because it's a roller. It's not a roller coaster. Those of you who've ever been to Disney World, it's more like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's neither one of those driving things or a roller coaster. You kind of come up to a wall and then spin and go a different direction. It's more like that. I think this ride is going to be, but again, it'll be exciting, and who knows where we'll turn out. So thank you.
Thank you so much to Deb Sose. It's been a wonderful chance to hear her, and I hope that you know that she wishes to be here in person and was very generous with her time this morning, thinking about the ways we can connect one to the other. As I'm listening to that video, I took a chance to go through the gallery, and I do know that many of the people involved in thinking about the educational future of the college are here on the call today, and I'm so pleased. And I'll hand it over to you, Marias, to round out some of the thinking we're having before we get into more of a discussion.
Thank you, Heather. Hello and greetings. My name is Maria. I am from Macedonia, and I am the team and curriculum lead for this work at Pearson College. Thank you for your interest in finding out a little bit more about what we're doing with curriculum innovation at the college. And thanks again, Heather and Benoit, as the co-conveners of this space, for the opportunity to share. By the numbers, this is my 8th country of residence and 8th year as a UWC educator. Prior to this, I was at UWC Mahindra College, where between 2013 and 2017, I was part of the team that developed and piloted the UWC project-based diploma. So when I think about this work, I don't just believe it's possible, and I know it can be done. And when I wasn't doing UWC things, I was working quite closely with the International Baccalaureate, especially around the curriculum review for the Theory of Knowledge course, and bringing in themes of power and politics and technology in how they relate to knowing and knowledge, as well as doing a little bit of decolonizing work by shifting away from knowledge, abstract, conceptual, and towards knowledges, plural, embodied, emplaced, situated within material cultures, within material practices. So very nerdy, very political, very exciting stuff, and probably not the way some of you remember TOK, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I joined Pearson College 2 years ago, and as I was doing all this work, and as at Pearson, the educational model and the educational vision was coming together. And since I've seen all of this visioning work, and I mean years of visioning work at the level of the whole UWC movement really come to blossom for us right now. Craig already spoke briefly about climate justice as the umbrella under which to develop this programming. And I want to echo this because one of the reasons that climate justice is so appropriate for what we're trying to do is it teaches us that alongside the work of resistance activism and organizing against the oppressive, extractivist, neocolonial, supremacist, cis heteropatriarchal capitalism of the Anthropocene, alongside all that, we must also do the work of regenerating, do the work of restoring, do the work of healing relationships within ourselves, between us, and with the lands and waters that sustain life. This is the first year of the UN decade of ecosystems restoration. This really is the work of our time. And honestly, right now, we're just catching up to it. And recently, I've also grown in confidence in saying that the living world does not need us to educate young people to leave no trace, as we like to say in the outdoor education world, as if the best that humans could do is to minimize the harm that they inflict onto the natural world. The living world needs us to teach young people how to weave traces of care throughout the world to make sure that we don't just have any livable future, but we have a future that is more just, more equitable than the world that we inhabit right now. And to do this, it takes work, it takes care work, and that cannot be taught or learned in the kind of the after hours of the IBDP or as an afterthought. The orientation to care also importantly connects us to deep principles of gratitude and reciprocity with the natural world, which have guided local indigenous worldviews and lifeways for millennia. So when I think about this work, it looks like building a program where we're graduating young people who are empowered and capable of moving the needle on some of the global priorities of climate justice. As to what this looks like practically, it was really Dr. Ellen Kelsey who gave us some of the language around this, because what we're trying to do with our students in this program is to move them in their educational journey beyond problem identification analysis and into the realm of solution orientation. And this is where the whole place-based piece is really key. It's not just opportunistic, as in we happen to have a spectacular waterfront, we happen to live in a verdant forest, let's do something with that. But it is about learning solution orientation at a local scale, at a scale where the threads that hold the living world together are visible, and it's also visible when they're broken. So imagine if learning was about connecting with and bearing witness to local First Nations that are revitalizing their cultural knowledge that is essential to their food sovereignty and therefore essential to their climate resilience and therefore essential to their survival and thriving in the future. Think about the ripples that this kind of education would send throughout the world if we educated in this way. And this morning we had a question about the global relevance and international mindedness of a program that is so deeply situated in a very specific context. And what I'd like to say to this is that it's less about what is learned in terms of content, like all that stuff about culturally relevant fish of Coast Salish First Nations, and more about the highly transferable competencies of doing work that advances the UWC mission to essentially change the world for the better. They'll learn how to power share, how to be a safer member of an intersectional team, how to dismantle systems of oppression at all levels, how to build hopeful alternatives for the future. And these are all highly transferable, and they're best learned. Some would go so far as to say that they can only be learned in the real world context with all of its complexity and with real accountability to real people. So to the question, what's next? I think we continue to think about how can a UWC education be more than we bring all of these amazing people together, throw them together, stir the pot, hope for the best, and how can we build a program that actively empowers and equips UWC students with the competencies to advance systemic transformations and climate justice goals. That's where we're at, and I'm grateful to be thinking about all of this with all of you.
Welcome back. I know I cut some of you off. That's
Sure
just
did.
You did, yeah.
We'll forgive you.
Oh, I hate the thought of it.
Was that really 5 minutes?
It was actually 7.
Wow.
I saw the groups. There were a couple groups that only had 2 people in them because someone had fallen off or had left. But most of the groups were rich with 3 or 4 people, and I saw what I hoped were some lovely conversations for those of you who I know. We've been talking about how to recreate a bit more of that time to really connect across, as I was saying, temperature, but also across geography and time. And are going to be looking to do that in the next couple of months at Pearson as well, to offer that. Beautiful story Benoit has just said in the breakout room. I don't remember anything I learned from the IB, but I remember conversations in the day room with someone from Haida Gwaii. So fair enough. Yeah, we hear that a lot. Are there other questions that emerged from there? I don't want you to necessarily leave today saying, I wish I could have heard one thing from Craig or one thing from Gary or one thing from Maria that I didn't get a chance to hear. So if there is anything, please do put that in the chat. And if you are somebody who has a lot of resources and wants to share them, I did put that Google document together. People can put things in there now. We're also happy to receive email, of course. So a question coming, when are we planning to transition? So Craig, I'll send this over to you. Thanks, Mariana. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, good question. We're doing a lot of the work on what is it we need and what are the problems we're looking to solve. And then I think to honor, I think some of the context that I'm learning as a new head, you know, from people like Heather, who've been in this position for a while, and the lots of work that's been done, and to honor that. Even the conversation just with Gary around some of the thinking many years ago around really dynamic, you know, timetabling and calendar idea, is to gather all of that, and then, but also then to think about what's a mechanism we can use that puts this into place. So one of the ideas we're currently floating is something called the IBCP, which is a parallel IB pathway that gives us the capacity to partner with institutions like VIU and UVic and Royal Roads, and to create almost a specialist IB program alongside the IB diploma. So that could be the stepping stone piece. It's not particularly radical, but it's one that gives us something that we can actually do and implement and then build from that. I think I'm a very practical person at heart. So I think the idea is if we can do something like that as a compromise position that will start to create how we can partner with really good institutions around us and develop a course around sustainability and around partnering with Indigenous epistemology too, and to get that started, then it will galvanize us to be able to move towards something even more innovative down the line. The other thing about the IBCP, which is a good stepping stone, is that it also matriculates well conventionally in universities. So I think probably what we need to also be aware of is there are amazing things we can do, but we also need to think about making sure that we honor our students' next steps as well, so that they can actually do something that they want to do beyond Pearson. So that's some of our thinking. That's probably the fastest timeline would be 2022 for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Craig. I'm just going to summarize a little bit of what I'm seeing in the chat. I'm seeing stories about place-based experiences with Gary Fletcher, going to the waterfall and being on the water. I could tell a story about stinging nettle soup with Mark McAvity. There are many of these pieces that are evocative for many of the people on the call, so thank you. Also seeing maybe this is inevitable. And there's one question, which will be our last question, sort of live like this, though please do follow up, is also from somebody wondering about how Pearson is dealing with the physical and mental health of students. And you know, reflecting on the changes that have needed to happen over the last 20 and 30 years. I know, Vidula, when you were at the college, and I know you have insight into the college more recently through Theo, but looking at your thoughts on that, Craig, also.
Yeah, in terms of the well-being issue, I mean, a huge issue that we can't do justice in a few minutes, but I think there is the acknowledgement and recognition that whether we're talking about Pearson United World College, United World Colleges generally, or IB colleges globally, that the characteristics, the demographic profiling, the needs and the challenges for students have shifted radically. And there's lots of complicated reasons for that. You know, one of them is social media, internet platforms, also different expectations, different timelines. I think these are all things that have changed significantly. It's been exponential. I think there's been more change in the last 10 years than the previous 10 years. So I think in evaluating different people on this call's experience of Pearson, that'd be quite interesting. Your experience at Pearson in the mid 70s would be very different from the mid 80s, radically different to the mid 90s, and then into the noughties in the most recent decade. Wow. And I think that can be a constant challenge for us as educators. You know, luckily we have a number of faculty here who've been here a long time, and their mind stretches back, and they would all say, yes, there's a significant change in the students, not because of anything fundamental around their selection process necessarily, or their own socioeconomic context or their own cultural context, but just simply the changes in characteristics. So one good example of that would be some of our students who come from the most challenging locations and contexts and socioeconomic contexts are still coming with a device where they can connect 24/7 on the internet, and they can connect continually and have that expectation. So that's one radical shift that's changed in recent times, and it doesn't seem to be that different as much anymore in terms of people's context with that they all have that situation. So if something happens at Pearson, then people know about it at Atlantic College and at Mahindra and at UWC, SEA, and in Japan instantly. So that gives you a flavor of how things have shifted. I'm looking at Carol, who I've had conversations with about her house parent duties back in the early 70s and how people were using coin-operated phones to phone home, or not even that, or having to keep ledgers. I mean, these are huge differences in terms of students' characteristics and behaviors.
Yeah, for sure. And I see in the chat the threefold airmail envelopes and the lining up behind Mariana to get to the phone. I'm going to bring us actually with a bit of a voice of what's happening right now in the community. And this was a good way to think about it. And I want to introduce Fatma Dosh, who's the Director of Admissions at Pearson College. And in our first Global Village update, we said, oh goodness, I'm not sure what is happening this year. I don't know how many students we'll have. And I see some very recent graduates on the call also, and you remember what last spring was like. Fatma is here to give us a bit of an update on how things have gone and who's on campus now and how we've dealt with that.
Hello everyone, my name is Fatma Dosh and I am joining you today from Victoria, BC. And thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. So as Heather mentioned, some of you might know about the challenges that we have experienced. So first of all of our second year students were able to arrive to Pearson College on time in August of 2020. However, our first year students experienced many challenges with obtaining their visas and also with the travel restrictions. So on October 22nd, Canadian government lifted the travel restrictions and we started to welcome our first year students, of course, the international ones. And between October 22nd and February 4th, we received 50 students and welcomed them. And of course, they all quarantined in a hotel in Victoria, BC. So my colleague Angela Gattari organized that. And I wanted to say thank you to Angela and for all of our staff and faculty who volunteered to be chaperones at the hotel as well. So as a team, it was difficult and emotional times and also for our students, but we managed to welcome all 92 students, first year students on campus right now. And we hope that this year, in 2021 August, we will be able to welcome all of our students on time. So hopefully there will be no travel restrictions and they will be arriving on time. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And indeed, it has been a cycle of work that is unprecedented. And I want to thank you, Fatma, for all of that work. And I see on the call some representatives of a variety of national committees. And thank you for the volunteer work you do and for supporting students coming. We did have a couple students lined up to speak about their work, particularly with women's empowerment on campus this year. But I'm thinking that what's happening on campus, getting ready for a cultural sharing time this weekend, may have overshadowed this particular moment. So last chance, Maria or Susie, are you on the call? All right. You can check out Maria's comments this morning. She had a lovely representation of really a lot of the exciting things students are able to engage with, even in these times, and especially in these times. Benoit, I'm now going to turn things over to you to talk about what alum are doing in these times and ways that we can get involved.
Thank you very much. This is the section that we call Life After Pearson, or in another program that we're offering these days is called Alumni for Life. And of course, our alumni from the first decades, who were the ones who were introduced to the Cold War issues and to the international understanding, intercultural understanding focus that we had those days. were shaped, and their characteristics are coming out now in initiatives that they're offering to their peers and to their community members. And so we've invited 3 of those to talk to us about the initiatives that they've launched. The first one, and you've seen some of their mini bios in the invitation email that we've sent to you, so I won't dwell on that presentation, but I'll invite Jacqueline Green from year 11 from Canada to tell us what initiative she has been launching and how she's inviting alum to get involved.
Yeah, thank you. I actually am delighted I'm not in my office this time, because in my part of the world, we can actually go to a ski hill as long as we're socially distant. And so I am en route there right now, but we do have Nicola. If you're able to put the slides up again, that could be great. But I founded Great Parenting Simplified, and it's now a nonprofit cooperative. I founded it because of my own struggles, and really thinking about what Maria said and other people have said. We cannot live our fullest life. We cannot help, we can't raise caring children, and we ourselves can't live our purpose in the world if we're struggling. And I was definitely struggling really hard. And I ended up taking my kids. Actually, I'm back in the town, Edson, where I was living at the time at the moment. And I took them to the emergency shelter in the next town because there wasn't one here, and stopped escalating physical violence. And that actually was the start of Great Parenting Simplified, because it started me on a quest to figure out how to have a better life, to figure out how to get out of the insanity I was living in. And last spring, when the pandemic hit, a number of things hit me. And one of them was how many parents were going to be feeling like I was feeling, isolated, alone, and really I was losing it with my kids, and really clear that wasn't cool, but I needed better tools, I needed support. And a lot of professional, well-supported parents in other ways are struggling, not just lower income families by any means. We actually, in Great Parenting Simplified, as this slide shows, we have parents from over 104 countries, and we have coaches from over 9 countries now. And some of the coaches and parents are pictured in those couple slides. And I wanted to mention that last spring, I put something out on a Pearson alumni page. I think it was a year 11, 12 or something like that. Dave Pinnell, Linda Wood, Jonathan Wade, Angela Ting, and all of them jumped in. Rudy Janusco helped out as well. And then Megan Tom, who's from year 33, I believe, or 32, she's recently come on board as well. And we're working on getting this information out to more and more people who really could use parenting. It's the top leadership skill, arguably. If you've got kids, it matters more than anything, or at least right up there with everything else we're doing, how we're raising our children. And yet most parents aren't getting the skills, the help they need, the support as a parent for their leadership. So that's really what we're doing at Great Parenting Simplified. We have a webinar that we're offering to the community, to Pearson people, that we're going to do, thanks Nicola, on the 24th. And it's a chance to come and meet some of us. So Dave, Linda, Megan, and myself are all going to be there, and we're envisioning doing some breakout rooms so parents get a chance to speak. And yeah, I meant to mention, so wonderful to see Gary, as well as Gary Fletcher, as well as Marks and Margaret here right now, because the work that you did was so instrumental in my life. And no question, Great Parenting Simplified was founded on really unconsciously me recreating a Pearson type environment, all races and religions, all major ones represented. We're continually trying to increase diversity, which is one of the reasons for the nonprofit cooperative, so that we can do more work with and get funded for different things that we do. But please join us on the 24th. You're welcome to sign up at greatparentingsimplified.com/PC. And you can get a replay afterwards, but if you can come at 10 a.m. PT or Pearson time, we would love to see you, hear how parenting's going, and we'll share the 3 top tips that we've been sharing about parenting in the pandemic. So looking forward to seeing you there, and thanks Benoit and Heather for this opportunity as well.
Thank you,
and
Jacqueline.
Davina, shout out to you too.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and we'll be following up after this call next week with a follow-up email giving you all the details of these events. Now we have Laurie Houston from year 3 from Ontario, who's also founded different initiatives that can be offered to our alumni to tell us all about it. Laurie.
Thank you, Benoit, for this opportunity to speak to the community. So I've my main passion, although Benoit's putting up the Global Village Speaker Series next flyer, which is for tomorrow. I'll speak to that in a minute. My main passion is international volunteer healthcare. So I created a nonprofit called Can Help Through Healthcare to deliver healthcare services with an emphasis on dentistry, because that is the field I practice. To take that to areas of the world where there is absolutely no healthcare provided, or very, very little healthcare provided. The idea being to try and create relationships with communities and have sustainable ongoing projects and educate in healthcare as well, because that is actually the biggest priority, because that makes the most change. Having said that, though, we do deliver very first world dentistry and other healthcare to these communities. If anyone's interested in finding out more, you can email me or contact Benoit. I'm sure he'll pass the information on to me. I'm always looking for volunteers. You don't have to be a healthcare professional. You can help with logistics. I also need people who might be able to help me to initiate projects within their particular countries if they feel there is a need and they feel that they could help in that respect. That's one of the most difficult pieces to that puzzle. So that's enough about that. So the other thing I've been doing since the pandemic, because I've been grounded and can't go on my missions, is I created something called the Global Village Speaker Series. And I've been thinking about this for a while and feel that we have a plethora of experts out there from the alum about different subjects, many of them to deal with the global issues we are currently facing. And I felt it would be good to have a platform where we could get together and hear our fellow alum and other experts, not necessarily from the UWC family, discuss their topics with respect to global issues. So far, we've had, I don't even know how many speakers I've had so far. We do this every second Saturday. We've spoken about climate change, transferring to the sustainable energy sources. Let's see, what else have we talked about? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about, because hopefully that'll spark some interest. So Pierre Ma from year 5 will be speaking tomorrow Eastern Standard Time, and he's going to be talking about getting innovations to big markets. And in particular, he's going to be talking about a particular innovation to try and substitute a product for plastic and glass containers. So that's huge. That's huge. A huge transformation if he can get something like that off the ground. I think it's well worth hearing this. And that's just one subject. We're going to be talking about regenerative agriculture and how that affects human health, fossil fuel subsidy reformation, food insecurity and global waste, advertising best practices after a pandemic, climate awareness and climate action, and public attitudes and citizen engagement with respect to this. There's quite a lineup, and I really do hope more people will join us in this discussion, because this is what we need to be talking about, folks. This is what the world is facing right now, and if we can do something as a community, then I'll feel good about my education at Pearson College.
Thank you very much, Laurie. And finally, we have Sue Mcdade from year 8, who was my second year at Pearson College, who's dedicated 30+ years of her life to working with the United Nations and who now is coaching young women and men to work globally and in the UN especially. Sue, can you tell us about your endeavors?
Okay, so I want to say thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to be here, and apologize for my look because I am enjoying retirement so much. I was sitting in a hot tub here in New Brunswick and got out because I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to just talk a little bit about my work now. So I'm officially retired, but had a long career with the UN. And thanks very much to Pearson College, I have to say. And the fact that I had the opportunity for the education there and learn Spanish, and shout out to Gary that I got the sensitivity to environmental sustainability. So I worked in the UN development program, which is part of the UN that works on sustainable development, anti-poverty, governance, and whatnot. And along the way, I faced a lot of challenges in terms of work-life balance. And although I finished my career with a very high-level job, I also did most of my career as a single mother with 2 young kids, including field postings. And so now I'm very committed to helping young men and women as they think about international careers understand sort of how to position for them from a skills point of view, but also on a personal dimension to understand some of the trade-offs and things that they have to be very conscious about in terms of family, health, well-being, and whatnot when they undertake careers, especially if they work in humanitarian issues. So now I do professional coaching for senior leadership positions, both for men and women, but I'm particularly committed to women because I'm from a generation that we were raised to think we could have it all and we could do it all. And I have to say my personal belief now, having done the career I've done, is that you can't. And that there are important trade-offs to be really aware of and to consciously make decisions. And I think women place very high expectations on themselves to be super mom, super worker, super colleague. And I just think that probably there's more conversation needed with professional men and women about that. And so, yeah, that's what I'm spending time doing now, and being a full-time mom to my 2 teenage children. So after 40 years outside of Canada, I moved back to my hometown in New Brunswick, where I'm happy as a clam, obviously sitting in a hot tub here with my friends, and really feel very grateful, I want to say, to the experience that I got at Pearson College, but also with a long work history, faced many, many challenges that I think I have something to give back, and very happy to do that as people think about international careers with international organizations, whether it's the UN, World Bank, IFC, other sorts of places. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for the opportunity, Benoit. And as we face International Women's Day, just to bring that dimension to it.
Thank you very much, Sue. As you know, we've surveyed our alumni last August, and we've been listening very carefully to what they had to say and suggest. And we've been offering this platform, the Global Village Update, for 3 sessions now, and we expect that they will be happening on a regular basis every 4 to 6 weeks, where we'll be doing this kind of format and also more pointed, focused sessions, perhaps on the educational curriculum to dive in, but also on the financial situation at Pearson and other topics that our alumni have said are top of mind. So thank you very much for your participation. We'll be bringing alumni from other decades in the future to tell about their initiatives. So back to you, Heather.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. During the time when we were listening to people talking, you all missed my dog barking very, very loudly. So sometimes these things work out very well. We're at the top of the hour here, and I'm going to bring us to a close. I really am grateful for all of you who joined in early in the morning or in the evening. I think there's a bit of chatter now happening back and forth about some experiential education opportunities. And yes, a lot of wisdom in the room. And so I'm really glad that we've started this conversation and hope that we can continue this conversation as we go. We're going to send out news about the next Global Village update when that date is set. And we're also going to be experimenting a little bit with format and getting some more chance for people to connect directly one with the other. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to say personally hello to in the breakout room or otherwise today, hello, and thank you for coming. And thank you for continuing to be part of this engaged community that is Pearson College. Feel free to unmute yourself and say goodbye as we tail off here now.
Very nice seeing you guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Mariana.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye. From New Zealand.
Bye.
Julie from Mexico.
Julie, hi, Mohammed.
Mohammed, Julie.
Thank you for watching parties.
Yes.
The COVID watching parties.
Thank you. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Yes, it's strong Philippines representation, both from there
From
and
Diego.
Yeah, there's Diego, Jenny, and Iggy. Yeah.
yeah, well done, well done.
Yeah. Nice to you.
Take care. Have a good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Gary, for being with us.
Yeah.
Julie and
Yes.
Mohammed.
Okay, bye everybody.
Take care. Yeah, we'll follow up there for sure. I'll make sure.
Nice seeing you, Jenny. Bye.
Nice
Bye,
seeing
Gary.
you.
Diana, gracias. Adieu. Salut.